How about that? Okay, I'm slow learner.
All right.
Took me a while to figure it out.
I'm going to call to order this meeting on today, July 25th. Back at it this time with a quorum. The first thing we're going to do since we're here is approve the minutes, which we can do even though we only have 3 of the 4 people that attended. Oh yeah, we don't need a...
3 is a majority.
Yeah, okay, that's, yeah.
You only need the supermajority for the cases, not for the...
Right now for approving our minutes. So, we've got minutes from June 13th and then very brief minutes from July 11th. So I move that we approve the minutes for June 13th.
I'll second the motion.
All right, there.
Aye.
And I move that we approve the minutes for July 11th.
I'll second the motion again.
All right, all in favor? All right. Do we have anybody here tonight who is not here on one of the applications that's on our agenda? That's all right. So we have on our schedule for tonight, we have Leah Gendron, Samuel Crescio, and Joel Keefe is here, and Mark Britton also here. Okay, so we're all here. Or some of these, for everybody. Thank you again. Our apologies again for having, or for lacking a quorum, I guess. All right. This is the first one. Oh, this is the home occupation. This one's
Sure, that's fine, I'm sure.
this is the cleaning. We're in the cleaning for this. Did anybody, while I'm talking over the table, did anybody have any questions to start us off?
I'll ask a question. You're just gonna basically live at this house and have some of your supplies in the garage or the basement and go to other people's houses and clean?
Correct.
So basically, if you weren't here, your neighbors wouldn't know you were running a business out of your house because you're gonna have no signs, no displays?
I was requesting a sign.
You weren't requesting a sign?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the only thing, but there'd be no activity at the house?
Right.
And do you usually supply the cleaning supplies, or do you use the people's supplies at their home?
I supply them myself.
Okay.
Will you have any employees?
I may take on a partner if, it starts prospering really well and I can't keep up, but more than likely it'll be my sister. I have 2 sisters and they're interested in it if it does well, so it'd most likely be family working together.
No, but you would probably either split up jobs, or you wouldn't have folks coming to your house and then going out from there. You would just
Correct.
split up
They live in Deerfield, so they would just handle, customers in that area, and I would do this area, so it wouldn't increase traffic or anything on the street or anything
That's
like that.
the reason for asking is
Right.
what kind of traffic or, noise. Your cleaning supplies and everything, will that, the normal trash pickup, will that handle your?
Yeah, recycling. I plan on recycling all the bottles like we normally do.
Okay.
The cardboard boxes that, I would get them in bulk, so I plan on recycling all empties.
And when you get your supplies delivered, is it just either like UPS or you go to the store and pick it up?
I actually go to the store myself and get them.
So it won't be additional, it won't be like Sundays dropping off.
Oh, no. No.
No, it's one of the questions that came up actually was the bakery, the baking person. All right, I think Unless anybody has anything else, like, real questions,
I think it's a very low-key
yeah, it's
home
very well
occupation.
within-
Went very well within the regulations, and other than the sign, which I forgot about,
Yeah.
it's a kind of business that your neighbors wouldn't do. I mean, it's not going to disrupt your neighbors at all.
Right.
Well, and if we look at the home occupancy uses that are allowed,
Right, it's,
you know, basically it's appliance repair person, a carpenter, electrician, a painter, a contractor, a plumber. These are all jobs that are going to be done not at that location, at the home, but outside of the home, which is basically what you're doing. It's not listed as one of the permitted, but it's, or similar person, which is, I think that falls into that realm.
and then it doesn't even have the big truck that like the
Yeah.
electrician or whoever would have.
This is true. So, I
Even
think,
smaller footprint.
Have you looked into any signage at this point?
I haven't so far. I've been waiting to,
See what's going to be allowed?
correct.
Okay.
I think for, you know, the sign ordinance is pretty clear as to what's allowed in that zone and, you know, for home occupancy use.
Right. Non-electronic, no greater than 2 feet in area.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
And, so I don't think we need to, yeah, as long as you're familiar with what the zoning ordinance is.
I read it
pertaining to
thoroughly.
that. Yeah, and Joe's gonna do a job making sure that you don't. So, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Somebody other than me want to...
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve, where's the there we go. I make a motion that we approve the application for home occupation for Leah Gendron at 47 Campbell Drive in the city of Easthampton.
Second?
Should we do the... Sorry, I'm like... Should we make some findings as part of our decision?
Oh, yeah.
I think that, okay, and that the...
A special permit is a 12. I really need to just flag all of the places that I always go to. Is it 12?
Well, it's 1042, page 1034. Yeah, four.
Thank you.
Where's the page?
That's the home occupation.
12.8.
12.8. Thanks. What gets me is huge numbers don't go with numbers. All right.
Thank you. All right. Okay.
12.79.
It's all pretty straightforward, though.
Yeah, but we still have to
We still have to
say
file.
stuff so that when
Okay.
Jamie writes it down, it's there. So that when I go to do the decision, it's there. The standards are going up around here.
Jeez. All right. So,
I get grief if I don't have mine.
I make a motion. Do we need to make a new motion then, or just add?
Will you table that motion and just quickly go through the findings?
Okay.
The 12.79 is special permit criteria for approval, and 10.44 is the home occupation criteria for approval.
Okay. So, if we lead to the special permit criteria for approval, A, conformance with the provision of the ordinance of the city of Easthampton? Yes. Protection of city amenities and abutting properties to the minimizing of any detrimental or offensive use of destruction of unique and important natural, scenic, and historic features of the site.
There's no concern.
Okay, minimalization of traffic and safety impact of the proposed developments, non-development. Adequacy of the method of disposal of sewage and refuse. We've discussed that. Adequate means of protecting wetlands. I don't think we have to worry about that. Mitigation of adverse impacts of city resources. Not going to affect it because it's provision of off-street loading and unloading of vehicles, which we've already dealt with. Applicant's effort to integrate the development into the existing landscape. It's not a development. Minimization of the area over which existing vegetation is to be removed. No vegetation is being removed. The consistency of the development, it's not a development. Adequacy of measures to prevent pollution of surface and groundwater and to minimize erosion and sediment. There again, no,
Not applicable.
not applicable. And adequacy of the methods to ensure that the use will not constitute a nuisance by reason of unacceptable level of air or water pollution, excessive noise, or visual flagrant structures or accessories. Don't leave your vacuum outside.
I won't.
And under section 10.4, home occupancy, we find that it's a home trade occupancy, similar in nature to an appliance repair person, carpenter, electrician, or painter.
And I'll again second.
All right.
So now do I have to withdraw my first, or we vote on this?
No, we can-
Vote on the second.
Right.
Aye.
All right.
And it supersedes the first.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
This used to be fun.
All right, so we're now officially at Hempstead.
Okay.
So, do you want to split up the...
Oh, right. So I'll write up the decision. I will get it to the town clerk once it's been recorded with the town clerk. There's a 20-day appeal period, and after that appeal period is closed, that's when you get the notice, right? Or do you get the notice first?
Yeah, you'll get a copy of the decision and what the appeal period is,
Right.
and then you'll receive a notice from the clerk stating that the appeal period's ended and no appeals have been filed.
Right. Okay.
And then you can file that with the registry of deeds, and you can then
You can take that to the building inspector to
get
get
the
your
building certificate, your permit, you can get your business certificate from the clerk,
Okay.
and you're on your way.
Thank you. How exciting.
There you go.
Good luck.
Moving forward.
You don't have to stick around.
Oh, well, I don't mind. Learning.
So next up, we have the petition, the application from, on behalf of Samuel Crescion. And you want to tell us?
Put this up so the board can see it a little easier. My name is Mark Reed from Heritage Surveys. With me tonight is Sam Crescioni, the applicant and the owner of the property. His daughter, Cheryl, who is also here tonight, and Dennis, who would like to build a house on this piece of property, which is located on Drury Lane, and is part of the application before you tonight. The plan itself, rearrange this a little bit, was approved by the Easthampton Planning Board as a building lot, and is recorded in the Registry of Deeds just as a building lot. When the Crescionis came to us with their plans to build a house, because of the configuration of the lot, in particular the lot depth is very shallow, the house wouldn't fit the requirement for the setback. The requirement, we were in a rural district, is 50 feet in the rear yard and 50 feet in the front yard in the RR or R35 zoning district in itself. So that we looked at options to try to facilitate what they could build on the property, and other options of purchasing land from the abutters to the rear, which they're not successful in getting that to make it. We're short by, approximately 18 feet or so, give or take. We're asking that the front yard setback be allowed to be reduced down to 38 feet from 50. So that is a 12-foot reduction in the front yard setback for it. We also looked at, and I have some handouts for you, houses in the area. Drury Lane has two homes on it now, and across the street is the town's water tank. So it's a very rural area off of Loudville Road. And we looked at setbacks for existing houses in the area, in the general areas, and I have highlighted of the map to give to the board. There's two different maps. One that is showing the two houses on Drury Lane, which is, the yellow is the parcel in question. And as you go beyond the property in itself, right here, this is a garage, which is the closest one, and the house sets back behind the garage. And then further up, there's an existing dwelling that has a front yard setback of 43 feet. Coming down onto Loudville Road, you can see that basically the houses just before the intersection are about 30 feet to 39-foot setback from the road itself. So that we feel that, it's consistent with the neighborhood, being a rural area, that if the board grants the variance, which we're hopeful for, that would allow the Creshonis to build their house on it. Furthermore, the part of the application that I presented, soil testing were done, because this is a septic system in this area. There is no city sewer. And secondary hardship, being the financial hardship of the land in itself, won't pass the percolation test because of ledge depth for that. So in order to build a house, and they've talked to Jim Gracia, they need to put a pump station and a force main going all the way down to Drury Lane to the sewer, which is located on Loudville Road, which is a great expense, and feel that that's one of the criteria in issuing a hardship, is both financial and topography and soils and all that aspect of it. So that's a huge expense and burden to be able to build on a piece of property. We didn't feel that we wanted to go back further on the property and ask for a rear yard setback, only because of looking at those maps and the other houses in the area. It kind of made sense that the front yard setback request would be the way to go instead of a rear yard setback. Also, the edge of the pavement of Drury Lane, of course, as everyone knows, you don't own right up to the edge of the pavement. Approximately 12 feet is the pavement width. So if you were, and zoning wise, you still have to measure from the property line. But so in reality, you gain that extra setback requirement from it for the property. So with that, you can answer any questions, or the Creshonis can.
What's the,
The rest of the land is all New England forestry.
Yeah, correct.
You can't build anywhere on that property.
Right. New England Forestry Service owns this abutting piece to the south, which is as you're coming at the intersection of Loudville Road and Drury Lane. That whole triangle section is all woodland protected area, as well as across the street, and of course where the town has their water tank.
I know you gave us what you have there, but I can't read it on here or there.
Sure.
What's the width of the house as it's planned?
The house itself is 36 feet in width and 55 foot in length. We have a 12 by 12 porch and a 24 by 24 foot garage.
So if we were gonna, if for example, we didn't grant the variance, the house would have to be like 20.
It would probably have to be,
No.
it would probably have to be a little less than that, maybe 22 feet in width. So it's, it's very, it'd be long and narrow. You can see these lines represent the setback lines, so it'd be a long and narrow house, a hallway.
Is the sewer line a lateral just to serve this house, or will it be a municipal sewer that if someone else down the street has problems, they could eventually connect to it?
We really haven't gotten that far in discussions with Jim. I'm not sure. I mean, there's only 2 other houses across the street that have, parcels of land that are pre-existing. Maybe Jim would want that.
It's not related to the variance, I was just curious,
Yeah.
because if this doesn't perk, I don't know if the others have great,
Yeah, correct.
and having sewers accessible is nice.
Yep.
And you'll be putting in sewer possibly that'll benefit the neighbors.
Yeah. So, again, we feel that, granting the reduction is no way detrimental to the public good or the neighbors in the area, as the statute says, for that. It won't, it won't have an effect on the overall zoning of the area either.
We've got our shape, soil conditions, not generally affecting the zoning district. I don't know, because we've got like a building lot that's been approved, but, yeah. And then,
There's the financial part of it is part of it that's, always been a...
Hardship is a...
Hardship is-
What is hardship?
hardship is where we
Yeah.
always,
Yeah, it's a hard one
always the
to
hardest one.
put your hands around, so...
Everybody has their definition of hardship.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Except Warren Buffett.
I mean,
Even he, for sure.
Right.
It's just a decimal point.
He has been paying taxes to the city as a building lot all these years that he's been, so...
Right.
So...
Yeah, it's always a matter of how to articulate it in a way that is specific enough to this situation that it just doesn't seem like we don't respect the requirements for a variance. So,
Well, I can tell you that in my opinion, the fact that it's been granted as a building lot
yeah.
and there is unable to be parked,
But that doesn't really impact the frontage issue. I mean, that's the issue, is the financial hardship has to relate to the variance that we're granting. So, and it doesn't have to be financial hardship. So it's a matter of figuring out how, to articulate that having to build a narrow house is a hardship, essentially, because, unless building a narrow house is somehow going to be more expensive, then we could tie it into the fact that there's already increased expenses to this location. But
That's a good point.
I don't know, I'm not that familiar with building, but I'm not feeling that. Doesn't pass my smell test. But on the other hand, 22 feet is fairly narrow, but I don't know that rises to the level of hardship is the problem. So, I don't know, anybody want to try to?
See, I would probably vote yes for a variance because of the narrowness of the lot. And I don't think the house size they're proposing is not an estate-type house.
No, absolutely. My preference is definitely to issue the variance, just to be clear. It's just a matter of articulating it in a way that doesn't...
well, I think that if you look at the zone that it is, being an R35,
Right.
thereby requiring the setbacks that it does, it substantially limits the type and style of house that is able to be built. Whereas the lot is zoned R35, I think that it should have a house. The idea of zoning in R35 is to have a house of not necessarily grandeur or stature, but of substance.
Right, so...
And by the fact that the lot is long, wide and narrow and shallow,
I like where you're going with this. Can we articulate that the financial hardship is that unless we grant the variance, the house that they would be forced to build would not be a marketable house for this location.
Yeah, that's right.
Related to the shape of the lot.
And that's related to the shape of the lot, yes.
Yes.
They weren't able to get any additional property.
And they tried.
So they tried, so.
And the neighbor across the street will not be impacted because there is no neighbor across.
Right, well, and we're certainly, I mean, there's certainly no detriment to the public good in that the setback is still going to be well within the setbacks, you know, of
It conforms
houses
to the
in the area. It
neighborhood.
conforms to the neighborhood.
So I think we're
I mean, having a weird house probably would do more detriment
Right.
to the neighborhood and to the intent of the zoning than, so. Thank you. All right, shall I make the motion? Then I'll do mine. All right. Ready, Jamie?
What was the last time?
I'm going to have to review the tape on this one.
All right. So I move that we grant a variance to Samuel
Krishoni?
Krishoni. I apologize for butchering your last name all of these
Yeah,
times.
Krishoni.
Krishoni. A variance to Mr. Krishoni for the property located at 23 Drury Lane, having found that there are circumstances related to the shape of the lot that do not, that affect the land and the structures that can be placed upon it, but they do not generally affect the zoning district in which it is located, and that requiring literal enforcement of the 50-foot setback would involve substantial hardship, substantial financial hardship, and that it would force the petitioner to build a house that would not be marketable within that neighborhood, and that it is desirable that we grant the relief, and the setbacks being well within what is common in the neighborhood, there is no detriment to the public good. And so it will not derogate or substantially derogate or nullify the intent of the ordinance.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very well.
So again, the permit will be,
I will
the
draft.
variance will be drafted, and there's a 20-day appeal period after it's received by the city clerk. And all the correspondence is going to Mr. Krishoni.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to...
224.
Right.
You want to take care of that? Is that what you said?
Or you can send it to our office, Jamie, if you like. That's fine, too. That way I can track, you know, the appeal period and so forth for Mr. Cascone. Okay? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice presentation.
So next up we have Joel Keith, 5 East Street, and this is an application for a temporary farm stand and related signage at 5 East Street, Easthampton, which is zoned highway business. All right. Do you want to maybe just start with, like, you can tell us a little bit about what your plan is and what you're requesting?
Sure. We grow corn down behind the old Underwoods and down in Northampton Meadows. We have corn and tomatoes. And we also sell onions, carrots, squash, zucchini, pickles, so on and so forth.
Do you grow the other things, or do you only grow the corn and tomatoes?
We grow the corn and tomatoes. The farm right next to us grows the squash and so on and so forth. So it's like the Meadows is a big sort of co-op. Everybody feeds everybody else down there. So they sell their vegetables under us, grow next to us. So we have off-street parking for customers that do come down. And I do have a copy of a proof of the sign that if you haven't driven by the house, because it's already out there.
This is coming down the mountain?
No, this is on Route 5.
Oh, okay, I'm divider, yeah. Over by our Underwood.
Right, Underwood comes over all the time.
On the corner.
Oh, on the corner of,
5.
5
Okay.
East Street, right?
yeah, I don't ever drive over.
If we'd had our meeting 2 weeks ago, it wouldn't have been there.
Yeah, it wasn't there. It wasn't there, but stuff spoils and
Oh, sure.
It was a matter of time, and we've already missed the first and the second, so this is the third time we've come down.
There was a section in here that I found, Jamie, and now I can't find it, about farm stands.
Yes.
Can you refresh my memory of what that is?
It's in the table of uses,
5-1.
5-1s,
from
agriculture, number 3A.
3A.
The parking seems pretty good. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I go by here a lot because I go up to Greenfield.
Yeah, it's all off-street parking.
Right.
There's a note in the table of uses of farmstead, it's temporary and permanent.
Oh, now I found it. I know. Okay.
It's actually in the application.
Yeah, I put it in there. Yeah.
Right. Rye sprays
Yeah.
primarily on.
Yeah.
Primarily, yeah.
Yeah. See, that was my question. That's why I was looking for this section. Because the regulation saying that farm stands for products grown primarily on the same premises, and I don't know how we
The distinguishing difference is if you have a full-time farm stand, it requires it to be grown on. So being a temporary doesn't have to be grown on the same property. But if you have a full-time one, it has to be grown on the property.
Well, no, this says temporary.
Right, that's what we're doing, is
Year-round.
temporary.
Yeah, but year-round, it says, it has like the majority, and then it gives like a way of testing the majority, and then for temporary, it still has sale of agricultural farm products raised primarily on the same premises, so it's not as specific in terms of how you're supposed to measure, but it still has the spirit, I guess.
It primarily is, I mean, we're right behind it.
Yeah.
If he's
I think the board, there's no definition for primarily in our ordinance, so you have to defer.
Can you define highway business zone for us? That's a commercial zone only, or could they build a house in that zone?
The house is already there.
No, but new construction, is it
If you were
primary?
coming to us,
I've already done this, so no, you cannot.
Okay,
Because I already got permitted for a repair business on the same lot. And the way it worked last time is the house is a pre-existing non-conforming structure. The garage, being commercial, would bring the property more into zone. So if the house burnt down, it could never be, or was torn down, it could never be.
so why
The
would
only
we,
residential allowed in highway business is multifamily by special permit.
but your question is maybe,
why would we make it difficult to put in a commercial establishment in a commercial zone, which is what a farm stand is?
It's not, it's just required underneath.
That's all I'm saying, right?
No, I understand what you're saying, is that basically, it's highway business.
It's highway
Yes,
business,
so
and this is a
you could-
retail
And
use.
this is a retail use.
so maybe we don't even need to be looking under agriculture.
So does it technically fall under a commercial use in highway business district?
It does, but we're selling on a farm stand, so they
Yeah.
decided to be agricultural.
But
Because we
But
grew
if
it.
that's harder for you, if that's harder for you, we don't want to make it harder for you. We want to make it easier.
try to make it easier.
Because we grew it, they wanted it under agricultural.
So if you bought all the produce from somebody else, it would be commercial.
Yeah.
Then it would be commercial, and then it would be no problem.
Do you,
Because it'd be highway
now
business.
with your neighbor, do you guys just trade, or do you actually keep track of what you're taking and pass the money off, or
Well-
buy it at wholesale and then?
Some of it's like, the problem is the big parcels of land. Our parcel is higher than theirs, so like we didn't lose corn, they did. But I lost cucumbers and they didn't. So I guess you could say that we trade off cucumbers for corn.
There's a monetary exchange there. I just heard it. Barter system is alive and well. I understand where you're going.
But
Yeah,
But I'm
it's
not sure
just,
that makes it any, does that make
I know,
it easier? I don't know.
because they're calling it a farm stand, then they're doing it as a temporary use. In highway business, it comes to the zoning board. If they called a retail store, it would have a different structure, and it would still have, go to the planning board.
That's what I was thinking, because it looks like most of
Is there a temporary use in highway business?
other than
Other than Farm Street.
three.
Not that I'm aware of.
Because we could also call this accessory, because it is temporary, so it might be considered an accessory use on the property as opposed to a primary use.
Yeah, primary use is residence.
Right.
Well, but then we get into home
I think it fits best as parcel under 5 acres.
I agree, but he doesn't grow the vegetables there. So I'm trying to find a way so he can do it, because he is in a commercial zone.
So you don't grow any of the products directly on your property?
So the property abuts it.
Oh,
On the other side of the linear trail,
Right.
because I walk that section.
You can still see the corn out there.
Yeah.
right, same
Is that close
premises.
enough? Is that close enough?
I'm good with that.
Okay. Then we don't have to worry about
If
the
you don't have to
commercial
if you
use.
don't have to get in a car, I think we can call that same premises. I mean, there's common ownership and you don't have to get in a car. That's
I think that's,
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, because you...
Common
fine.
Yeah.
Use our common sense.
Okay, here we go with that common sense thing again. This is zoning.
I mean, clearly the point is to not have it be like,
At my house, I couldn't put up a farm stand because I grow a few vegetables, I have to bring them all in.
right.
You'd have to go out and buy
Buy
them
them
and
and bring
resell
them,
them.
right.
That's not, that is not...
Well, they don't want
Right.
it to be like the farm stand in Hadley on Route 9.
Exactly.
But that's not clearly what, I mean, this is,
They're primarily his and his neighbor's
right,
vegetables.
that are right there, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can see the stuff growing from the farm stand or a short distance from there, I think we can count that as same premises for
I agree.
agricultural.
It's owned by the same person.
Yes.
Right.
All
I
right,
think that's...
Or leased by the same person.
So then-
Yeah,
so
and
then-
farmers lease the majority of their land anyway, so it's theirs.
so, that's our sketch design.
$10-2.
Page numbering to be different.
10-15.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Better than we do.
Oh, yeah, zoning.
I'd like to join this. I was listening to that temporary thing and I was cringing.
Did you decide not to put up a building? Or you just have that yet?
So this is just, you just have to do the,
I have tested the water, and the water was really muddy. We parked a couple cars there that we had towed. People started banging on our door in all hours. I said, this is not gonna work.
How big is the sign?
So, I just
yeah, it's
bought the boat for a tractor going,
just,
so we'll be going to do that. Yeah.
How big is your sign?
There's one that's 2 that are 4x4. And then there's little tomato signs, picture of a tomato hanging off the side.
Artwork.
Well, yes, artwork.
a big words or a picture?
It says, it's a picture of a tomato, it says fresh tomato.
And,
Not artwork anymore.
but,
We measured it out to fit underneath the square footage allowed,
okay, then.
if that's where you're going.
That's where we were going.
Yeah.
The biggest thing can be 32 square feet, which is you have, and there's this little sign, which is tricky, so. Except, wait, how does that work?
So
He's got 2 of 16, which
Yeah,
goes to
no,
32.
Yeah, but look at the,
So
how,
you're looking at agricultural signage in the highway business.
yeah,
So my interpretation is that he could have 10 foot by 1 foot signs.
except that then it says number only 1. And what is that? That's just like, this is like 10 feet, 12 feet. Max total area signs, max sign size, max height, and then number 1. It just doesn't make any sense.
Disregard them.
1012?
Yes.
The reference to 1012 is that there's a section in the ordinance that says, has the word written out 10 and then in parentheses right after the word 12. Like as the max height is 10 and then in parentheses the number 12. Clearly somebody didn't proofread well enough, but
That's the scenario we have
That's the reference, when things are internally inconsistent. All right, I think
Didn't we determine that it was one sign but sandwiched against each other? It was still considered one sign? Remember we did that with the...
yeah, but wasn't that the thing there, wasn't that like the fact that when you get the permit, they charge you for both sides, but when we do the math, we only count it as one side?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah. But that still even wouldn't fix this problem, but whatever, we can put that to the side for tonight. All right, so,
Joe's gonna drive by it every day. I'm sure if he sees a problem with it,
Yeah, well, the signs are also removable, so they're not a permanent, he considers it not a permanent sign because to take them down.
right.
So,
And just by including it in the permit, he doesn't have to go to Joe
Every
every
year.
spring to get his signage.
that's the only reason.
So it's included in the decision.
We're good.
I already spoke with him on that.
Hold on. All right, well, I move that we, having considered the application and determined that the food to be sold is grown on the same premises in as much as it is an abutting property with visual contact with the site where the stand will be, and that there's adequate parking, and that the location is already zoned highway business, and if anything, this brings us more in line with the existing zoning, that we approve a special permit for a temporary farm stand and associated signage to comply with the limitations of the agricultural signage in highway business noted in table 10.2. Did I leave anything? I talked too fast. You're going to be reviewing tape?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll second it, whatever you said.
All in favor? Aye. All right. I'll do the decision, get it to the clerk, you'll have a 20-day appeal period, and then you'll receive a notice after that. Any questions?
I do have a question. Where it says signage, it says max up to 100 square feet. Why does it have a max of 100 square feet?
That's exactly what we were just talking about.
And then it says 32 square feet, so is...
Well, I think we read it as the number being inconsistent with the rest of that, so that you could have more than one sign as long as all of your signs together.
Equal up to 100
Equal
square
up
feet.
to 100
You could have 3 signs that are up to 32 square feet. as long
Okay,
as
so
they're
each one I got's like 16, so that's
Right.
way under.
Yeah.
Okay, you're okay. Right.
Yeah, it's the number that,
But you're only allowed to have one sign, of course.
but which doesn't make any sense.
100.
Which is it?
So,
Okay, very good.
yeah.
That cleared it up for me.
Glad you understood it.
All right. Thank you very much.
We're all set.
You're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll see you on the next one.
Right, I'm moving right along. Let me get all of this. So,
Mark Britton.
yes, Frank Britton. So this is on the application of Mark Britton for the property located at 29 River Street in Easthampton, zoned R35, and the application seeks a special permit and/or variance for reconstruction of pre-existing non-conforming garage and required setback pursuant to Easthampton zoning ordinance 11 and 13-1. Right. So,
I have some questions about this, only because if the property's in a flood zone. And I don't know if the applicant understands the restriction, because you're going to take the building down, and what you put back has to conform with very strict floodplain regulations. You have to, I believe, prove to the city of Easthampton that you're not displacing any water, and you have to elevate it, I believe. And I don't think it would serve as a garage if it was elevated above the flood zone. And I believe the city of Easthampton has to enforce those regulations because the federal government subsidizes flood insurance, and because the federal government has spent so many billions of dollars in recent years on flooding, they're getting very strict. And if the community doesn't enforce their flood regulations, the federal government can cancel flood insurance for the entire town. Now, I doubt they would over a garage in Easthampton, but the federal government has that hanging over every community's head about the floodplain. To force the towns to pay attention to it so that the federal government can stop bailing out everybody who builds in flood zones.
Well, my understanding, because we've been flooded several times since I've been with this, is the federal flood insurance does not cover the garage.
No, not that the insurance does, but we still have to enforce construction standards because you're in a flood zone. You can't get flood insurance, I'm sure, but still the town is forced to regulate what you build there and make sure that your building there doesn't in any way impact anybody else, technically. And it has to be built a certain way, to certain standards, and I don't think you can on that piece of property because it's so tiny.
But the garage is there already.
And if you left the garage there already, there's not a problem, but you're intentionally taking it down, so that means it's not there anymore. So you don't have to take it down, unless someone has read this differently than I have. I think that's a concern, and my concern would be over everyone. I don't know how many people in Easthampton have flood insurance, but my concern is the impact if we don't do it right on other people.
I'm sure that people in Easthampton have flood insurance.
Yeah. And now if you have a mortgage, a federally backed mortgage, and 99% of people who have mortgages are federally backed unless you got it from your mom and dad, and you're in a flood zone, you have to have flood insurance. It used to be a choice.
We do have flood insurance. This is a summer cottage. And we do have flood insurance.
Okay, well, if you have flood insurance, then I think that's more concern with why we have to enforce the flood regulations, because if that garage goes out during a flood, the federal government is going to wonder why you have a brand new building not built to flood standards in the flood zone that you're asking for them to pay you for.
the flood standards, those are in the building?
Yeah, you either, my understanding, you either have to elevate so that the first floor, including the basement, is above the flood zone, and I don't know what the elevation is, the land elevation is during the flood zone, or you have to make it so the whole flood can go through. Basically, you build it on piers.
But we had been approved for a grant from the federal flood to raise the cottage up. It just wasn't financially, I mean, the grant money was part of it, but it just wasn't financially possible. They wanted us to raise it 10 feet.
Right, so that's what the elevation.
Right.
It's probably 8 feet, and they want you 2 feet above the flood elevation.
But the garage is a building that's there that we've been using for storage.
I agree, but you're intentionally taking it down, which
But
means...
we're gonna replace it with a
But-
better building.
But you have to replace it, I think, to the federal government flood standards. And I don't think, because of the location of your building, you can elevate it. And you have to, because you're taking it down.
So,
Oh, no, we were looking
You
at,
say in the note here that the garage is going to be
7.8.
identical except slightly higher,
yes, we're gonna have a second floor on the garage
the height of the whole garage.
for additional,
Not the first.
it's gonna be the same footprint,
Okay,
because the Conservation Committee has already approved this.
right.
so it's on the same level, it's just,
Right.
it's just going to be a taller building.
Right, it's gonna be slightly tall, 4 feet taller,
Construction.
to give us additional storage space. And this primarily is because of the flood possibility.
Right.
Where we could raise, take our belongings and put them up.
Is it feasible to, without taking the garage down, to reinforce it to be able to build on top of it?
I think that if Joe were to look at that, he would say that we couldn't, you would have to take the garage down in order to reinforce it sufficiently. The roof has a sway in the middle of it.
Well, I was thinking about whether it would be possible to, you know, because if you're going to be building up anyway, you're going to have to take the roof off.
Right.
Basically, take it, prepare it for a second story addition, and then so that all 4 walls remain. But you
Right.
take the roof off, and then you reinforce it, and then you go up, because then it's not.
The old, leave one wall standing, so you're technically not demolishing the building, you're just modifying the building.
Right. See, what we were gonna do is have the building pre-built and move to the site.
I see.
Okay.
So we know that it's gonna
What's
be,
permitted, okay, what's permitted in, that's the floodway, not the floodplain. And they're in the floodplain, I think, not, well, let's hope that they're not in the floodway. In the floodway, they can't do anything.
Floodplain, yeah.
You're in, well, the floodway is a small portion of the floodplain. But what's a permitted use in the floodplain is structures existing prior to the adoption of these regulations, and your garage was, which conform with the provisions of the ordinances regulating underlying districts, including maintenance and repair usual for continuance of such an existing structure, and improvements to such structures, provided that the footprint increase of those improvements does not exceed 25% of the overall footprint of the structure. In the event such structure is destroyed, such structure may be built on the same location but no larger than the original overall footprint. And that's if it's destroyed, not intentionally taken down.
Right, but it says it can be rebuilt, or it can be,
Wasn't there
can be modified.
something
Isn't that
about,
what he's
like,
doing? He's basically modifying the building?
well, except if
he's
he takes
taking it down.
that's different.
I think he needs to meet with Joe first to find out what the construction standards would be.
Well, but in a way, that's a little bit to the side, and that our decision can say it has to comply
Right.
with the.
Well, now, if he's already been to the Conservation Committee,
I went to the Conservation Commission on Tuesday,
and
and they issued a negative determinant of applicability. They don't require any further wetlands permitting because the Conservation Commission basically said the existing structure takes up a certain amount of the flood waters, and that they're replacing it with an identically sized building, and so that the building they're replacing it doesn't take up any more of the flood storage than the existing building. So they see it as a wash.
no pun intended.
Thank you.
I thought there was something in here. I found it last time. I know I'm not finding it. That talked about when, like, that if it was.
This is the floodway. But this is the floodway. Oh, okay, all right.
And then so uses in the floodplain, and then it talks about construction.
Because it had, I thought.
Okay, all right, if we're going to use, okay, thank you, Jamie. This section on special permits. The zoning board of appeals may issue a special permit only if the applicant is complying with the following conditions. 4 copies of the plan determining that the construction will be in conformance with the state building code and will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to safety. I mean, that was my comment about going to the building inspector.
Right.
And I don't think we can approve it unless we know that. 7.182.
Can you read that again, Linda, please?
The zoning board may issue a special permit only if the application is compliant with the following conditions. A, 4 copies of a plan determining that the construction will be in conformance with the state building code, specifically those sections dealing with construction in floodplains, and will not result in increased flood heights.
This is great. This is the ordinance saying, you guys don't know what you're doing.
Well, no, increased flood height is what Conscom said. It wasn't going to increase the flood
right.
height because the...
You need to see it, because what it is saying is we can only do the application if it's compliant with the following conditions, and when the condition is 4 copies of the plan determining this, it's not just that they aren't doing it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it seems like basically the ordinance was written to preempt the conversation that we've just had and note that we in fact are not in any way, shape, or form qualified to make a determination about whether or not the plans are going to meet the building code, but also not trusting that if we issue a decision, that if it's not, basically wanting to backstop both us and the building inspector with respect to the floodplain.
yeah, and we also have to provide that set of plans. A copy of the plan needs to go to the planning board, the Board of Health, and the Conscom, and shall be required to wait 21 days for the recommendation from each board.
Which
So in
is
other
more
words,
than we normally have to do.
yeah. Again, so.
All right.
So I
Would
suggest
you like
the
a photocopy of this?
applicant go and meet with the building official to see what kind of plans you would need to comply with this section, so you'll know up front if you want to spend your money on those kind of plans. I think he'd be able to give you some idea of what you need. And if you could on that property comply with that standard of the state building code, because I would hate to have you spend money on a plan and then it wouldn't fit.
I don't understand. We're going to take the building down, that's all right with the Conservation Committee. We're going to dispose of the material, and then we're going to bring in a structure that's built by a commercial company.
No, but you're in a flood zone and the federal government writes the rules. We have to enforce them.
But we're going to put the building in the same spot that the...
But the federal government basically doesn't want you to because they're sick of bailing out people in flood zones. So they're making it difficult for people to rebuild in flood zones.
But it's not going to cost the federal government anything.
But
more than...
in general, it does cost the federal government billions every year. And so they're making it more difficult to people to do this. And you're just caught in the middle of it.
Right. Regardless, clearly there are complexities to floodplains that
Yeah, beyond us.
that Linda has an inkling of from her previous existence in city planning in Connecticut that are way over my head, and I think I speak for the rest of us. But the ordinance is prepared for that, if you will, in that it is requiring that somebody other than us determine whether your construction can comply with the building codes that are applicable to floodplains. And if you weren't taking it down, it wouldn't be treated as new construction, essentially, but because you're taking it down, even though you're using the same footprint, and that, as far as we're concerned, the footprint issue, we can look at that as pre-existing non-conforming use and whatnot, but we're constrained because you're in a floodplain to require a certain production of a certain document to us before we can approve it, proving that what you want to build is allowed to be built there. And I don't think that.
So if I'm understanding this whole thing, I can't put the pre-built building that we want to buy, put it on that property, but I can reinforce the existing building to the point where I could extend the height.
Absolutely. That's why you see buildings in floodplains all the time where they leave one wall. They tear down 3/4 of a house and save one wall and build it back up, because technically they're modifying it. They're not demolishing it.
So
It's one of those weird little clauses.
So the question is, what's a permitted use and what requires a special permit to be done? So in our zoning ordinance, 714 has the permitted uses, and the relevant permitted use here is that structures existing prior to the adoption of these provisions, which conform to the provisions of the ordinance regulating underlying districts,
including maintenance. I think you want to read this one, 17.14G.
Oh, is that, okay. No, that's what I was reading. Why is mine different than yours? I think
no
this is just
idea.
printing.
Yeah.
It's time for everyone to get an entirely new copy of the ordinance.
Yes.
I don't think my words are different. I
Changes have,
No, I guess my wording,
It's cut and paste, and so when you print it off, it changes.
All right, so that structures existing prior to the adoption of these provisions, which conform with the provisions of the ordinances regulating underlying districts, including maintenance and repair usual for continuance of such an existing structure and improvements to such structures. This is horrible. Such structures, provided that the footprint increase of those improvements does not exceed 25%. Okay, so it's permitted for a structure to have the maintenance and repair that would be allowed under our normal zoning. Are you reading this the same way?
Yes.
Without having to go into this section of the ordinance. So your R35?
So they-
R35. So we would look at R35, and if what you want to do, you can do an R35. If if you're just going up.
which accessory use of garages.
Right.
Up to 25 feet.
Yeah. Now you can do it under the regular zoning ordinance. We don't have to look at the floodplain stuff. As long as the existing structures don't, the improvements don't cause the footprint to be enlarged by more than 25%. And then it says in the event that such a structure is destroyed, it may be rebuilt in the same location but no larger than the original overall footprint. And then, so that's assuming that it's there and you're improving it, not there you take it down and you put something new. And then by special permit, we can issue a special permit which it would be required because no structure or building shall be erected, otherwise created or moved except the permitted thing from the permitted list. Unless a special permit is granted. Then we go to see what we need to do to grant a special permit, because if you wanted to erect a new thing, we're now in a prohibited use, but we can issue a special permit. In order to issue a special permit, we have higher standards than we normally have for people who don't live in floodplains, and that standard requires that we have 4 copies of a plan determining that the new construction will be in conformance with state building code and will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to safety, extraordinary public expense, create nuisances, or conflict with existing local laws. So it sounds like, other than the state building code, which I know nothing about, there's a good chance that you'd be able to deal with the other things, because you're not gonna, like Concom found that you're not gonna increase flood heights. What you wanna do is put something back where it already was, essentially, but I can't speak to the state building code, and I think that's exactly why they make it a requirement that we require a plan, because we have no idea what the rules are. And I'm sure they change more than one would expect. And let's see, what are the other, there's a couple other requirements in order for us to issue a special permit. So the other requirements are, that one wouldn't, wait.
I mean, the other,
yeah, no, there's like a requirement about fill and new construction and substantial improve. How is this? Oh, come on here. Okay. How do we square C with A?
well, there's no encroachments because it's not increasing.
If he's not gonna, see,
Oh, because it wouldn't be a substantial improvement, because the substantial improvement is more than 25%, and for this purpose, it's the use of the phrase new construction, because the whole reason that they're in the special permit section is because it is new construction, but it's not new construction in the sense that there's an existing footprint. It's just a semantics that is annoying. And then we also would have to,
The Conservation Commission's already ruled
So
that
that's the
the negative determination of
Yep.
applicability is already.
okay, so E is set.
So really what you need is basically a set of plans stamped by an architect that says that
It
this conforms to the state building code. Well, 4 sets of plans that stamped by an architect that state that it's in compliance with the state building code and
For floodplains.
floodplain regulations, and that then those plans have to be given to those boards.
Yep.
Planning board.
So, given that those requirements,
We just aren't able to issue a decision for you tonight.
we could continue it to.
I don't know that well, yeah, we could continue it. I don't know that we can continue it because we have to issue a decision within 90 days.
The board has,
Oh, we have discretion at,
there's 180 days for the special permit and then 90 days after the close of the special
we have
permit
180 days for our
for
special.
the hearing, so you can,
and we just opened it 2 weeks ago, right?
right.
So
we
all
could-
special permit hearings are 180 days?
Let me just double check. But,
I thought that was
I thought that was,
just comprehensive permits.
yeah.
But like every other thing we do is a special permit, and I thought we only had 90 days.
And I think we have 90 days from the time we close the public hearing to make a decision. I think we
Don't we have 90 days and the applicant can consent to another?
we have decision,
Yeah, because I'm gonna go back with this, and, you know, I'm just sitting in for him.
You know, so you start off with, don't shoot the messenger.
Go to the videotape, it's very easy.
yeah, actually, in our ordinance, we don't have a time period for how long the special permit proceedings can take.
Okay.
We have to, the hearing has to open within 65
Oh,
days
that's
of
what it-
receiving the
that's-
application.
yeah.
And the decision has to be granted within 90 days of the close of the hearing, but there's no timetable for how long the special permit can,
Okay.
the discussions can go on for.
So we can table here.
So we can continue this so that they don't have to apply
Right.
yet again and
Right.
be yet again.
So we have several months. that
But we should set it,
But we need to set a
we
specific
have to
date.
set a specific day and time, but we should do it out of it because obviously it will take time to get plans if the decision is made to get those plans. And then also they would need to be with the other committees for 21 days.
Now, are we talking the special permit, is the variance included in that? Because there's this second
There's-
thing that there was instructed, if the board doesn't allow the
Special permit go for a variance.
Yes,
So there's a special permit for the floodplain, and there's a special permit because it's also a pre-existing non-conforming use where the building is built in the setback.
Yeah.
So there's actually 2 special permits being wrapped up into one. It'll be one decision at the end, but
Right.
you can do the whole.
Would it be better if we just continue this to August 8th, and then each meeting we have, if we don't hear from the applicant?
I spoke to the applicant this morning, and they said that they'll all be away August 8th.
right.
So then September 12th.
And we can check in, and if they're,
Yeah, well, what we can do is we can continue it to September 12th, but let everybody know that if they have nothing to add on September 12th and don't have, I mean, they can also come ask us questions, but if they don't have any reason on their end that they want to come on September 12th, all they need to do is get in touch with Jamie and we can continue. They don't need to come if they don't have anything to add, because I don't want to inconvenience people unnecessarily.
So who should Mark see or talk to tomorrow? Jamie?
yes, well, the offices are closed on Friday.
All right.
Tuesday.
I know that. That's why I put the property taxes in the Dropbox tonight. Tomorrow afternoon they were closed, which would be my next option.
So just to make a poor attempt at clarifying, as far as the normal special permit, making the garage that is, I mean, it's what, a setback issue, is that?
It's in the setback. It's
Yeah.
in the side setback and in the front setback.
Yeah, that's what so let's imagine for a moment that it wasn't in a floodplain.
Okay.
They'd still need a special permit because it's in the side setback and the front setback. That part of it, I think we are unlikely to have any substantive issue with, given that it's already there.
It's a pre-existing non-conformity.
Like, you're not-
You're putting it back the same thing.
You're
so
not
making it
increasing
anymore.
the nonconformity, which is generally what like our standard is if it's not increasing the nonconformity, we want to help taxpayers to do what they, continue with, what they've been doing, what they've been permitted to do. So that aspect of it, because it would just be putting it back where it is not going to increase the nonconformity. We'd be fine with it. The issue is that because it's in a floodplain, we have special rules for dealing with anything that isn't an insubstantial improvement. Meaning, if you take the whole thing down, or if you are enlarging it by more than 25%. Enlarging the footprint by more than 25%. Because they want to take it down, it triggers this extra process. And for their questions about that extra process, we refer them to Jamie next week. Or September 12th.
Oh, you can be sure that Mark will be calling you.
I'm sure.
But thank you very much for coming on their behalf tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the
And keep
bad
the process
news.
moving. This is, none of us have dealt with this before, and
This is
so,
a new one.
on its face, it looked very straightforward, at the beginning of July, but, once it became clear that it was in the, the floodplain and that had added up this other layer of complexity, obviously, we needed to digest that, so.
Yeah. I'm still confused about the federal
I would just
flood
ignore all of
insurance
that.
involved with all of this.
Because in order,
They say, adios, if it's not part of the
Right.
house, you're out of luck.
well, in order for anybody in the municipality to get federal flood insurance, and you can't get private flood insurance, towns have to enforce certain standards, or nobody's eligible for flood insurance. And flood insurance is essential, I think, if you live in a flood zone.
Well, and we have had it, forever.
But I think the important thing as far as our decision, the mechanics of flood insurance, who pays for it, who gets it, what the federal government requires in order for the people in the city to get it, is really to the side in the sense that what we have, all of that rationale might be why the ordinance is written the way that it is, but really the important piece, the actionable piece, is that the ordinance has specific requirements because it's a floodplain, and we can't issue a special permit unless those requirements are met. And I'm sure that Laura would be more than happy to talk at length about the reasons for those requirements, which I'm sure
So
what they are,
Jamie
but-
has the requirements.
But
Yes,
Jamie has the
Jamie has the
requirements, and that's the important part, is that it's very specific, and it probably, I hope, is,
It shouldn't be too tough. Really,
Yeah.
what you need is an architect to get the stamped plans that says that
And it, right.
building is complying with the floodplain regulations and the state building code.
And it,
Because they're a registered architect, their stamp on it.
I might disagree that it might be easy to get those plans, Jamie. I don't want,
Well, this is a prefab
Right.
house.
but then it probably doesn't comply with the state building code and the floodplains.
here,
I just don't want to give
clearly the
him,
issue is that we have no idea what is required to meet the state building code, but in order for the structure to come down and then be rebuilt from the bottom up, it needs to comply. And the other option is for it to not come down to the ground and get rebuilt, but instead to be improved while remaining. So it's like a choose your own adventure. If you tear it down, we have to go the route of having to comply. If you don't tear it down, we have more flexibility because we have fewer requirements on us in terms of what we have to review. So if you want to turn it to the ground, it has to meet the rules and we have to go through this special floodplain procedure. If it doesn't get torn down, we're in a different game. But either way, we will continue this hearing till Thursday, September 12th. And we'll continue it to 7 p.m. But you can, in this room, meeting room, conference room B, and you can let Mark know that if that time doesn't work for them or they have nothing to add, that there's no penalty for not coming, but if they could give a courtesy call to Jamie to let him know that they won't be coming, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Good luck. All right. So yeah, do you want to be on, we should close out do we have administrative items?
Yeah, there were no applications that came in for the August 8th meeting.
Ooh, can we
So
cancel
seeing as
August
nothing
8th?
got continued to August 8th,
canceled.
looks like
nice.
the ZBA doesn't have any business on August 8th.
Excellent.
The board still wants to meet.
No, absolutely not.
So next one is September 12th then?
Yes, we will next convene on September 12th. It looks like we're going to just continue until the end of the summer, all of our projects that are pending. And there aren't any requests for comments?
No.
All right, move that we adjourn our meeting.
Second?
All in favor? All right. So Leah, you want to join the zoning board of appeals?
I was going to say the same thing. Did you sat for a whole meeting?
Just sat for a whole meeting.